What is up, Work Toward Wonder fam? I am so excited that you're here to watch today. Today we are riding solo, but God has really put this amazing message on my heart. I was able to share it at my youth group, and I just cannot contain. I need to share it. I need to share it with you guys just because the way that God revealed himself through this is so amazing and so beautiful and such a big part of my story and such a big part of everyone's story, talking about obedience, obedience in the wilderness, obedience when it's hard, and obedience when you don't want to do it. So let's get into it. Okay, we're going to start in Exodus 17, verse 8. We're talking about Moses with the Israelites in the wilderness. And so here it goes. Verse 8, Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. Wherever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. While Aaron and Hur held up his hand on one side and one on the other side. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Isn't that just such a beautiful story of what obedience looks like? The power of obedience. But as I really want to break this down, what does this story look like? And to totally understand the story, I want to look back at where Moses has been so far. So at this point, Israel has left Egypt and has been in the wilderness for almost 3 months. Guys, that's insane. Like, I don't even like going outside for like more than like a week. That's like a lot. Like, camping is cool, but 3 months in the wilderness. And just before this war, the people were angry at Moses because that they needed water, and they were begging Moses to take them back to Egypt. And I can just imagine where Moses is at in this point, feeling abandoned, overlooked, unworthy, exhausted, angry, frustrated, annoyed, like all of the things. And I can look at my life, and I know that you can too, just looking at all the things that God has called you to do and all the things God has asked you to do. And it can be overwhelming. It can be exhausting. It can be hard. And I just think about this moment, Moses in the wilderness, leading a group of people that he feels inadequate to lead. I don't know if you've ever been there in a place that you feel inadequate, that you feel like you aren't worthy, that you cannot do it. And this is where Moses finds himself. How is he supposed to lead a nation of people? How is he supposed to do this? The people are angry at him. They're begging to go back to slavery. Like, God delivered them from slavery, and they're begging to go back because the wilderness is so miserable. And they get to this place, and they meet a war. When everything could not have gone more wrong, when life could not have been more crazy, they run into another nation who was ready to fight. In fact, in Deuteronomy, it talks about how this war was unprovoked. It says, Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt, how he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary, and cut off your tail, those who were lagging behind you, and he did not fear God. This attack was not provoked. The Israelites weren't doing anything wrong. They were following the Lord and walking in the wilderness, and then they get attacked by an enemy, people who do not fear the Lord. I don't know if you've ever been there when you're walking through life and you feel like everything is coming against you, and then one more big hit, and it's nothing that you did wrong. You're obeying God. You're walking. You're understanding everything that God's asking you to do, and then you just get hit over and over and over again. Amalek was picking on the weak stragglers of Israel, the weak people who fell behind. I don't know if you've ever been there. When you feel weak, when you feel tired, when you feel exhausted, and there's nothing left, and then here comes another battle. But the beauty of the story is that it doesn't end here. In fact, this was Israel's first war as a nation. They've never fought before, and they're about to fight this strong army. When they were in Egypt, God did everything for them. He sent the slaves, or he sent the plagues. He sent all of these things to save them. He walked them out of Egypt through Moses. And they were once slaves, and now they're free. And now they see themselves in a place that they have to physically fight. There's so many times that God is going to do things for us, but there's also times that you have to fight your war. And when the war comes, you cannot shy back. You have to go fight it. So this idea is that you will face battles in your journey. In your journey, in your walk with God, you're going to face battles. But the beautiful thing is that it doesn't end there. In fact, God has called you to something far greater than you can handle on your own. I just want to kind of give you an insight of Israel. Under oppression in Egypt, God leads them out. When they're being chased and come upon the Red Sea, God parts the water. When they're traveling in the wilderness, God guides them cloud by day and fire by night. When they were hungry and complaining for food, God sent them manna. And when they were complaining about water, God sends them water from a rock. We can see God's provision throughout the Israelites' story. And I encourage you, look back on what God has done in your life and see what he will do again. And so when you face this war often comes when you're exhausted, when you feel like you have nothing left, when you're in the wilderness and you have nothing left. It often comes when you're exhausted. But what will you do when you face the war? Moses couldn't handle this battle on his own. The Israelites couldn't handle the battle on their own. But that is why that they have a God who is greater than anything that they will ever face. The question is they have to lean into him. Same question for you. Will you lean into him when you fight the war? When I was preparing this message a few months ago, I came across this saying, you know, the one that's hanging in Hobby Lobby, the one that's written in everyone's Instagram bios. It says, when my strength fails, that is where his begins. And I used to live by this verse. When I have nothing left, God's going to step in. When I have nothing left to give, that's when God steps in. But I encourage you to change your mindset. This implies when my strength fails, that's where his begins. This implies that I can do a little bit on my own, but when I failed, then God's there to pick me up. But I encourage you, think about it this way. It's never my strength that always is. And when it's his strength, you can never, ever fail. Stop trying to do it on your own. Stop avoiding what God is asking you to do because you think you can do it in your own strength. When you obey God, when you walk out with him, you're going to see so much provision in your life, so much breakthrough, so much guidance from God when you truly press in. So stop trying to avoid obedience by seeing how far you can go on your own. You will fail. Invite God into your battle as you walk out your obedience. And you can see this so beautifully in this story. That God asked Moses to hold the staff in the air. What would have made sense to go battle, what would have made sense for Moses to get within the battle and to fight on his own, to lead his people, what would seem like that makes the most sense to people. When you think about your life, there's always a point where you're like, oh my gosh, this is how I fix this problem. I can do this, do X, Y, and Z to get out of this battle. I'm struggling with money. If I work harder and harder and harder, then I'm not going to struggle anymore. I'm having trouble with a sickness and a disease, and if I just see more doctors and I just try new things and take new pills and do all these things, then I'm going to get better. If I'm struggling with a relationship, if I just keep getting new relationships and just keep building new friendships, or if I cross the line that I shouldn't have crossed, or if I do this or do that, then everything will be okay. I want to tell you, quit taking your life into your own hands. Moses didn't take this battle into his own hands. If he took the battle into his own hands, could you imagine how that would turn out? Could you imagine if Moses got in the battle? Got in the battle with them? They wouldn't have succeeded. Because your obedience is where your success comes from. And you can see this in this story. But I also want to tell you that obedience doesn't always make sense. So many times we want to solve a problem in our own way, and we feel like we know what's best. And like I just said, we try to orchestrate life. We try to decide everything, how it's going to work out, and it's going to be perfect, and that's how it is. But the truth is we know nothing There, in this big scheme of life, we know nothing. We understand nothing. Only God does. Ecclesiastes says, "As you do not know the path of the wind, or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things." Isaiah 55 says, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Don't allow your need to understand to hinder your desire for obedience. When you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you have a desire to obey him. Your spirit wants to obey him. But unfortunately, we are a two-part being, one of flesh and one of spirit. And our flesh every day fights against our spirit. Our flesh is the one that wants to make sense of all things, that wants to be in control of all things, that wants to see everything work out on this side of heaven. But it doesn't always work out that way. And we cannot allow our flesh to overtake what God is asking us to obey. We have to allow our spirit lead and allow God to be the one that we follow. And so I look at this story, and God asked Moses to hold up a staff that's in itself is powerless and weak. There's nothing that the staff can do. But when you look back at it, look at the power that God used through the staff. He took the staff and turned it into a snake. He used it to unleash many plagues in Egypt. He parted the Red Sea with his staff, and it provided water in the wilderness. The staff in and of itself seems useless. It seems weak. It seems powerless. But powerless in the hands of God becomes powerful. Weak in the hands of God becomes strong. Useless in the hands of God becomes useful. And whether it's a staff, whether it's your story, whatever it is, look back and see everything that God has done and everything that he's going to continue to do. And what seems broken, God will use for power and for glory. And when it seems like nothing else can go wrong, that's when God steps in. And it is such a beautiful thing. Because when I look back on my life and see everything God has done, it makes me want to obey more. It makes me trust him and understand that whatever he asks me to do, I can do wholeheartedly because he has it under control. He has kept all of his promises. He will fulfill every promise he gives you. Remind yourself of his goodness. And when you know who God is, your obedience will follow. I just think about in my life, when I fully understand something, when I know who they are, my parents guide me and they direct me, and I obey them because I know that they have my best interest in mind. I know their heart for me. The same can be said through your Heavenly Father. When you know who he is and know that he has your best interest in mind, then you're going to have this desire and the passion to obey him. That doesn't mean that every day you wake up, you're going to be like gung-ho, ready to obey God. But that means that when life throws things at you, you know you can trust what he's asking you to do, even if it doesn't make sense. He's asking you to tithe that church. And when you have $2 and he's asking for 10%, that seems like so much because you have nothing left. But what he's going to do with that 10% is going to change your life. When he asks you to delete that app or get out of that relationship or to get out of that friendship, when he asks you to do that, he's not doing that because he wants you to suffer. He's not doing that so he can control your life. He's doing that because he knows more than you and has so much greater for you. And so I think about this story with Moses. That God asked him to stand on the top of a hill and hold out a staff. That's how he's going to fight. Our fight doesn't look like the world's does. Our battles may be similar, but the way we combat it and the way we fight it is different. And that's why our outcomes are different. In reality, should have Moses won the war? No. Should have Israel defeated Amalek? No. But God. And I want to ask you, where do you need a but God in your life? Where do you need a but God breakthrough? Where do you need a but God success? Where do you need it? And I encourage you, what has God asked you to do? What has he asked you to do? And have you done it? And will your but God moment come because you decide to obey? Instead of making up excuses, Moses didn't make up excuses where he was like, no, I'm going to try this on my own and then I'm going to obey you. Or no, I'm going to try this first and then I'm going to obey you. No, he decided at that moment that he was weak. He had nothing left. He could not do it anymore. And that is where he obeyed God. When will you decide to obey God? When will you allow God do what he needs to do? God couldn't work through Moses if he didn't hold the staff up like he asked. It's not that God is not willing. It's that you are not willing to work with him. It's not that God is not willing to change your situation. It's not that God is not willing to provide. It's not that God is not willing to show breakthrough in your life. Could it be that you are not willing to submit to him? You are not willing to do what he's asking you to do. Oftentimes, our success, our breakthrough, our miracle needs our obedience. It needs our obedience. And if you're not willing to obey God, then you're not going to be able to see his hand in your life. God's not going to force himself upon you. He simply just wants you. And this is where you see with Moses. And a lot of people may say, oh, God would have saved Israel anyways. God would have showed up anyways, even if Moses didn't obey. But the truth is that God couldn't work through disobedient people. He can't work through disobedient hearts. He can't work through that. He needs you. That doesn't mean that you're ever too far gone. That doesn't mean your disobedience is going to stop him from working through you and working in your life. But God is a gentleman. He's not going to press himself upon you. And so when you decide to obey, when you decide to press in, when you decide to obey God and see everything that he's going to do, your life is going to be forever changed. And also looking at this story, you can see that obedience isn't always easy. Verse 12 says, but Moses' hands grew weary. Moses' hands grew weary. Obedience isn't always easy. Obedience isn't always fun. Obedience will be hard. But the breakthrough and the success is always worth it. But Moses' hands grew weary. This is such an example. I've seen it in my life. When I'm obeying God, when I've said, yes, God, I'm going to chase after you with my whole heart. When I've said it and I've decided it and I start walking it out and I'm like, dang, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. Dang, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm done. I can imagine Moses standing on top of this hill, holding up this staff, holding up his staff for hours upon hours from sunup to sundown. I can just imagine him doing that. And how tiring it can get. And I just think about my own life when God asks us to do stuff every day, to get in the Word, to tithe off of every single income that you have, to love his people well. It's hard. It's not easy. And I would be lying to say if I get it right all the time. And I would be lying to say that I've never failed. And I would be lying to say that it was easy and that anyone can do it on their own. But that's when you step in with God. When your obedience meets the Maker. And together, that is when you are going to be successful. When you're going to see God. And when you're going to see his blessing on your life. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So many times we take this out of context. We forget the through Christ, and we try to do it through Gracyn, through ourselves, or through other people. Moses didn't ask Joshua to figure out how to win the war. He didn't put his trust in Joshua. He didn't put his trust in his army. He put his trust in God. And that's where his victory came from. And it says Moses grew weary. Moses grew weary. Sometimes your obedience requires support. Verse 12 continues to go on and say, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and one on the other side. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. Moses was surrounded by the people he needed who could help him walk out his obedience. I think about our lives and the people who are around us. Would they help you walk out your obedience? Will they understand what God has asked you to do and tell you to continue to walk it out? Will they see all that God has done and say, yes, push through and follow this? I think about the story of Job and his friends, how they were discouraging him. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are you allowing to speak into your life? Moses would not have been successful, would not have won. He couldn't have done this on his own. It is literally impossible. But because of the people in his life, because of the people that God placed around him, he allowed them to help him out. He didn't try to manhandle his obedience. He didn't try to say, I got this, I can do this. Moses was humble. Could you imagine the humbleness it took to say, I need help to walk out my obedience? I know so many times, and I've done this in my life, that I try to walk out my obedience on my own. I try to control it on my own. I try to do everything on my own so then I get the glory. But it's not about me. It's not about you. Your success is not about you. It's about God. And so allow God to help you out. Allow God to place people around you to help you out. It would just make sense if Moses held the staff and it was easy and God just gave him the strength. But God wanted to see Moses' obedience. But he placed people in Moses' life to help him carry that out. Are you surrounded by people who will encourage your obedience? Who will stand beside you? If Moses wasn't surrounded by these people, he would have failed. Israel would have failed. Think about your obedience. Your obedience has a ripple effect. Could your one moment of disobedience change a generation? Think about it. If Moses didn't obey, Israel would not even be a nation. They would just be another fallen story. Can we say the same about your life? If you decide not to obey today, what will your future look like? What will your children know? Will they know God? Or they only know selfishness? Will they know the power of his presence and the power of your obedience? Or will they know the hurt and the pain of the world? Surround yourself by people who trust God, who love you, and who will walk with you in your obedience. Your success is on the other side of your obedience. What would have happened if Moses decided that he wanted to go fight, that he wanted to take this into his own hands? They could have lost the war. Thousands of people could have died. The Israelites could have been captured. Moses could have even died if he stepped foot on that battlefield. But he decided to trust God and trust God's plan. It's not your physical action that impacts. It's not your physical action that allows your success. It's not the stick that Moses held in the air that made Israel win. It was the power of God through his obedience. And so I ask you today, what does God ask you to do? What does he ask you to do? Are you obeying him? I can tell you that there was a moment in my life where God asked me to do something and I didn't do it because I didn't want to. It wasn't even hard. It just required me to deny my flesh. And I didn't want to do it. And I didn't do it for a while. And I could physically feel myself slipping away from God, slipping away from who God is and what he's done in my life. I could feel it. I could see it in my life. I wasn't in my Bible as much as I wanted to be. I wasn't passionate about God like I should have been. And I definitely wasn't on fire. And I got to this moment, and God was like, Gracyn, you're in this place because I asked you to do something and you didn't do it. I think about Jonah and the whale, that God asked him to go to Nineveh, and he literally ran in the opposite direction. He got swallowed by a whole dang fish because he didn't obey God. His life became so much harder. He traveled thousands of miles when he could have gone 100 feet. How many of us are avoiding obedience, and our life is wreaking havoc on us? And the moment I decided to obey God, the moment I decided that this is what you have for me, I'm going to trust you, the peace I had in my life was overwhelming. And now I can proudly say that my obedience is going to affect generations. It's going to affect my future family. It's going to affect those around me, and it's going to affect my faith. And because I chose to obey God, because I chose to say yes to this very simple task he asked me to do, then I get to see the fruit of it. And on the other side of it, in the moment, I didn't want to do it, but now I'm grateful I did it because I've seen God's hand in it. And I pray that you will have the same story, that you're going to do what God has asked you to do. If you feel like you haven't heard from God, what was the last thing he asked you to do? Go do it and see his hand in your life. See him work out your life. See his success, see his miracles, see his victory and his power in your life. All it takes is obedience. And I know that seems so easy to say, but it's hard to walk out. And it's daily taking up your cross, denying your flesh, and saying, God, I choose you today. It's surrounding yourself with believers who love Jesus and saying, together we are going to walk in obedience. And I love the way this story ends. In verse 13, after Joshua overwhelms Amalek, verse 14, the Lord said to Moses, write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, the Lord is my banner, saying, a hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. The Lord is my banner. The Lord will help you win every war when he is your banner. And the thing about the banner is you have to pick it up and carry it. A banner is powerless in the closet. It can have the most profound message, but if it is hidden, it is useless. But the moment I decided to take up the banner, saying, I believe the message that this banner holds, that's where the power comes from. I believe what God says. God is our protector. He is our provider. He is our strong point, and he is our victory. He is everything we need. He is our banner. And when you choose God as your banner, you choose to take up everything that this banner comes with. The backlash, the hate, but also the victory, the power, and the success that is far greater than anything. Anything the world can say, anything your doubt can say, far greater is the power of the Lord than anything the world can say. The world will make fun of your obedience. The world will not understand. When Moses stood on the mountain holding a staff, I'm sure the enemy laughed. But they weren't laughing when they started losing. People are going to make fun of your obedience when you decide to walk it out. But when they see the power of God in your life, they're not going to have anything to say. And so I encourage you, believe the good plans that God has for your life. Allow yourself to trust him in the wilderness. when he asks you to obey, when you have nothing left, when you are weak inside, when you find yourself in Moses' shoes, attacked on all sides with nothing left. I encourage you, press into who God is. Hold on to him. Do what he asks you to do and see his hand in your life. And don't allow the voice of the world to stop you. Don't allow your flesh, your own inner thoughts to stop you. Obey God. See his promise, see his victory, and see his success in your life. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world, and I just pray that this message touched you, that you see all the power that comes through the obedience of God. I just encourage you to like and subscribe and to go check out our old videos. The power that God has spoke through these amazing guests we have is crazy. I just go back and watch them sometimes and I'm like, wow, God, that's so beautiful what you've said and what you've done. I am learning just as much as you are everything that God has for us. I encourage you to embrace the wonder of the Lord. I encourage you every day to wake up and look for a piece of wonder that God has shown you. Remind yourself who God is and how great he is to you. And obey him every step of the way. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next Wednesday. Bye, guys.